January 49 BC. A shallow stream in northern Italy called the Rubicon. On the far side, the Roman Republic, the most powerful state on earth, which has just declared this man an enemy of the state. On his side of the water, one single legion, 5,000 men against the world. The man at the river's edge is 50 years old. He has been a fugitive, a hostage of pirates, and the most spectacular debtor in Roman history. If he crosses, it is civil war. He says, according to legend, the die is cast and rides into the water. This is the story of Julius Caesar. And the real question is not why he crossed. It is how a bankrupt aristocrat from a fading family got to the edge of that river, with an army that loved him more than it loved Rome. He was born in 100 BC into the Julii, a family with a glorious name and an empty treasury. They claimed descent from the goddess Venus. They could barely afford the neighborhood they lived in. When Caesar was a teenager, the dictator Pharsalus seized Rome and ordered him to divorce his wife, whose family was on the wrong side. Everyone divorced when Sulla asked. Caesar refused and went on the run, sick with malaria, hiding in barns while Sulla's price sat on his head. Then, in his 20s, pirates captured him at sea and demanded a ransom of 20 talents. Caesar laughed at them. He was worth 50, he said, and made them raise their own price. For 38 days he lived among them, joining their games, reading them his speeches, and telling them cheerfully that once freed he would come back and crucify them all. They thought it was a great joke. He paid the ransom, raised a fleet, hunted them down, and crucified them all. Remember that move. He never once accepted the terms he was given, not Pharsalus, not the pirates. He renamed the game every single time. At around 32, serving as a minor official in Spain, Caesar stood before a statue of Alexander the Great and wept. By this age, he said, Alexander had conquered the world, and I have done nothing worth remembering. Most men feel small in front of history. Caesar took it as a deadline. Back in Rome, he began spending money he did not have on a scale no one had ever seen. Games, gladiators, feasts, roads. His debts became legendary. At one point, he owed more than the annual income of entire provinces. The nobles laughed at the showman drowning in debt. They missed what he was actually buying. Every borrowed coin was converted into the one currency Rome's old families refused to count, the love of the crowd. And when his creditors finally closed in, the richest man in Rome, Crassus, bailed him out because Caesar had made himself too popular to fail. In 60 BC, Caesar engineered the deal that made him. Rome's two most powerful men hated each other, Pompey, the greatest general alive, and Crassus, the richest man in the Republic. Caesar had neither army nor fortune. What he had was the third asset both men lacked, the voters. So he made himself the bridge. Pompey's soldiers, Crassus's money, Caesar's crowd. Together they could simply outvote the Republic. Historians call it the first triumvirate. It made Caesar consul and then handed him something far more valuable. A 5-year command in Gaul, modern France, a wild frontier where a governor with talent could build an army, a fortune, and a legend. The Senate thought they were exiling the showman to the woods. They had just given the most dangerous man in Rome his laboratory. For 8 years, Caesar fought in Gaul and studied himself becoming a general. A quick word on his instrument, the Roman legion, roughly 5,000 professional soldiers who could march 20 miles a day and then build a fortified camp before dinner. Caesar's edge was never numbers. It was speed, engineering, and words. He bridged the Rhine in 10 days just to show the German tribes it could be done, then burned the bridge and left. He landed in Britain, at the edge of the known world, mostly because no Roman ever had. And every winter, he wrote. His dispatches from the front, The commentaries were read aloud in Rome like a serial adventure, always in the third person, always calm, always starring a hero named Caesar. He wasn't just fighting the war, he was narrating it. His enemies in the Senate had better ancestors. Caesar had better prose. In 52 BC, Gaul rose against him, united at last under a young king named Vercingetorix. Caesar cornered him in the hilltop fortress of Alesia, and then did something that still gets taught in military academies. He walled the fortress in, 11 miles of ramparts, towers, and traps built by his own soldiers. Then scouts reported a Gallic relief army coming, 250,000 men, by ancient counts. Any sane general retreats. Caesar instead built a second wall, facing outward, and placed his army in the ring between the two, besieging a fortress while being besieged himself. When the double battle came, the Romans held both walls at once. Vercingetorix rode out, dropped his weapons at Caesar's feet, and Gaul was Rome's for the next 500 years. Like Alexander at Tyre, Caesar refused to fight the battle geography offered him. He built a different battlefield. Then the deal collapsed. Crassus was killed on a doomed expedition in the east. Pompey drifted toward the old nobles who had one goal: to strip Caesar of his army and drag him into court, where they could bury him legally. The Senate delivered its ultimatum: disband your legions or be declared an enemy of Rome. Caesar understood exactly what he was being offered: the choice between a courtroom he could not win and a war he might. Which brings us back to that cold January river. He crossed with one legion, and then he did the most Caesar thing imaginable. He moved so fast that the war was almost over before it began. 60 days, and Italy was his, largely without slaughter, because he pardoned every enemy he caught. Rome had expected another Sulla, another bloodbath. Caesar's mercy was so unexpected it worked like a weapon. Even his clemency was strategy. The real fight came in Greece, at Pharsalus, in 48 BC. Pompey had twice Caesar's numbers and 7 times his cavalry, and a plan built on that cavalry: sweep away Caesar's horsemen, then crush his flank. Caesar read the plan in advance, and hid a 4th line of infantry behind his cavalry, with orders never used before: when the horsemen come, do not throw your javelins. Walk forward and stab them at the faces of the riders. Pompey's cavalry charged, shattered Caesar's horse, wheeled to envelop, and ran into a wall of spears aimed at their eyes. The elite cavalry of the Republic broke and fled. Caesar's hidden line swung into Pompey's exposed flank, and the battle was over. Pompey fled to Egypt, where the boy king's advisors, hoping to please the winner, murdered him on the beach. When they presented Caesar with his rival's head, he turned away and wept. Whether the grief was real, political, or both, with Caesar, the answer was always both. In Egypt, he met Cleopatra, a 21-year-old queen locked out of her own capital by her brother's courts. She had herself smuggled through enemy lines to reach Caesar, rolled, says the legend, inside a carpet. He was 52, and the 2 sharpest political minds of their age recognized each other on sight. But that is the next episode. Caesar settled Egypt's civil war, crushed a rebellion in the east, reporting it to Rome in 3 words: Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered, and returned home the undisputed master of the Roman world. And then he did something strange for a conqueror. He started fixing things: debt relief, citizenship for the provinces, colonies for veterans. He even fixed time itself. Rome's calendar had drifted 3 months out of season, so Caesar replaced it with a solar calendar of 365 days and a leap year. With one small correction, 16 centuries later, it is the calendar on your phone right now. July is named after him. But Rome's oldest families could forgive Caesar anything except what he had become: permanent. Dictator for 10 years, then dictator for life. He refused the crown when the crowd was watching 3 times at a public festival, but he kept the power the crown implied, and for the old republic that was worse. About 60 senators formed a conspiracy, and they placed at its front a man Caesar loved, Brutus, son of his longtime mistress, a man he had pardoned after Pharsalus and promoted ever since. On the 15th of March, 44 BC, the Ides Caesar walked into a Senate meeting without a bodyguard. He had dismissed his guard weeks earlier. Mercy, he believed, had made him safe. The conspirators crowded around him with a petition, and then the daggers came out. 23 wounds. When he saw Brutus among the blades, says one ancient account, he stopped fighting, covered his face with his toga, and fell at the foot of Pompey's statue. The man who never accepted anyone else's script died in the middle of one last, perfect, terrible scene. So what did Caesar know? Look at every hinge of his life. The pirate set a ransom, he set a higher one. Sulla set the rules, he broke them and outlived the man. The nobles owned the Senate, he made the street his Senate. Pompey owned the battlefield at Pharsalus, Caesar redrew it with a hidden line. Rome's calendar itself was wrong, he rewrote time. Caesar's single genius was this: he never fought inside someone else's frame. He treated every rule, every institution, every battlefield as negotiable, something a bold enough mind could redraw. That is why a bankrupt from a faded family ended up owning the world's greatest republic. But the same conviction killed him. A man who believes every rule can be rewritten eventually believes the rules of trust and fear no longer apply to him. He pardoned his enemies and dismissed his guard, not from kindness, but from the certainty that he had rewritten that game too. 23 wounds said otherwise. Redraw the frame, but never believe you stand outside it. Next time, the 21-year-old queen who rolled out of a carpet and outplayed Rome's 2 greatest men, Cleopatra. Subscribe and step into the minds that made history.